So is this the line for Dragon's Maze?
This is gonna be awesome.
Wow, the line is really long.
Mommy, there's no shade.
We'll meet up later,
How long will you wait?
as long as it takes.
So you guys are only gonna do this one ride all day?
It won't be that long, probably.
Mom, can you get us food?
But wait, are they cutting?
Caleb, food is so far away.
Should I say something?
Daddy, pick me up. Mom!
Hey, there's a line here.
Daddy, swing me.
That's like 20 people.
my God.
One person holds the line for 20 people? This is bullshit.
Don't go there. Go on a real vacation. Go RVing.
I'm trying to roll, I'm trying to ride, I'm trying to float, I'm trying to glide. No, don't be shy, just take my hand and hold on tight. Oh, skate to me, baby, skate, slide your way on over, slide your way on.
Gary and Shannon, KFI AM 640 live everywhere on the iHeartRadio app. Tuesday, September 7th, 2021. A generation of American men who have given up on college. They say they just feel lost.
It's a nice.
There's also men quitting porn.
We're just giving up on everything now? Okay.
That was a very dramatic sigh.
Well, True Crime Tuesday is also coming up next hour. We were talking about a case out of South Carolina. You may have seen this in the headlines recently. A lawyer shot several months after the unsolved killing of his wife and son. There may have been some financial hijinks going on. Tasty Tuesday is coming up next hour with our friend Neil Saavedra. Is going to join us. Talk about some food stuff.
How are we going to do all this in just a couple short hours?
That's a good question. We better pick up the pace a little bit. What else is going on?
Time for What's Happening.
Well, millions of Americans lost their unemployment benefits yesterday, so there's a handful of economic support programs that are still working. Here in California, you're going to be on unemployment for a decade, I think, probably. They are not going to end those programs here, but federally, there were two critical programs that expired. One of them provided jobless aid to self-employed and gig workers. Another provided benefits to those who have been unemployed more than 6 months. And the $300 a week supplemental unemployment benefit also ran out yesterday. The estimate is somewhere close to 9 million people will lose all or some of that combination of benefits.
Well, it looks like the Mu variant, which originated in Colombia, looks like it is in Los Angeles County. The variant, recently determined to be a variant of interest, has been detected in 167 people over the summer here in LA County.
167?
Mostly detected in July.
Now, we were averaging about 1,000 cases, and we're higher than that now. But between June and August, that would have been 30,000, 60,000 cases. And we're saying that there's only been 167 of the Mu variant in that number?
Fauci says Mu is important to monitor, even though it's rarely seen in the United States. He says we're paying attention to it, but we don't consider it an immediate threat right now. Yet it continues to capture headlines.
What about Lambda?
Lambda is evened out a little bit.
Lambda was in Peru.
Yes,
but we can't say that.
In December.
Can't
They say that it is worth watching. They're all worth watching, but stop writing so many headlines trying to shock people and fear people into the new variants that are going to wipe out the entire globe.
Why don't we name the variants after Hall of Fame quarterbacks?
Can we do that?
Yes, if you'd like to.
Okay.
But they have to be currently enshrined in the Hall of Fame, not future Hall of Famers.
Sure.
Like, we're not going to call it a Tom Brady.
Right.
We're not going to do that.
Right.
But I mean, sure, you got
Terry
Joe Montana,
Bradshaw,
Fran Tarkenton. I mean, you could just go down the
Roger
list,
Staubach.
and each one of them has their own different qualities.
Mhm.
Some of them more contagious. Some of them might be more deadly.
Dan Fouts.
Ooh, the Dan Fouts variant.
Oh, that's a good one.
COVID-19 boosters are coming, although it looks like the Pfizer approval will begin September 20th. The initial plan was for both Pfizer and Moderna to start on September 20th, but the White House stepped on its own shoelaces on that one. The FDA says they need more time and more evidence from these companies to judge whether or not the booster, A, is safe, and B, is effective. Pfizer has all of its paperwork in. The FDA science advisors say they will publicly debate Pfizer's evidence on the 17th of September, and that we could see Moderna a few days, if not a week or two after that. Johnson & Johnson is way down the pipeline, by the way.
One of the stars of Tiger
To
King.
get our business up and running, we got
Who is she? She seemed nice. One of the stars of Tiger King is dead at 53, found face down in his bed in New York City. His name's Eric Cowie. He's like the long hair, shaggy guy trainer that was like sitting on a chair. From what I remember, they were all characters, weren't they?
He looked like he would have been a stunt double for Joe Exotic in a different world.
Mm-hmm.
They all kind of went for that
Parallel universe.
I used to travel with Metallica in the late 80s look.
Totally.
And never cleaned up after that. Simu Liu was a guy you saw in stock. He was in the new Shang-Chi movie, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings.
Apparently,
the new Marvel movie.
Before he was in the blockbuster, he modeled for stock photos.
All over the place.
They're great.
Look at him. He's in just a meeting and he's wearing a hard hat and one of those things. He actually threw out the first pitch Sunday night in San Francisco before the Dodgers-Giants game.
Cool.
And then did a backflip after he just right there standing on the mound.
Can you do that?
Oh, yeah. Which part?
The backflip.
No.
I think you could train yourself to do that.
Nope.
In time for fantasy camp.
I don't think so. I think I'm too tall for that.
No.
I feel like I'd have to... The jumping... Don't scrunch your face at me, Big Beef. I think that I would have to curl my legs up so tight if I were to try to do a backflip.
I think you could do it.
How tall are you, Gary?
I'm 5'10", 5'11".
You could
5'11".
totally do a backflip.
Okay.
I've seen professional athletes do backflips.
Well,
and they're
clearly
they're
I'm
bigger
a little bit
than you.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I suppose.
I think this is going to be a new hobby, a new talent. Think about how cool it'll be at parties if all of a sudden you just backflip. No one's expecting it.
I can
no
do it
one
in here.
sees that coming.
There's room right there. I could just do it right there.
Yeah.
Okay. The story that started making noise on my computer, by the way, was the revelation of what is Grimace. Have you seen this?
No.
You know Grimace, the big purple teardroppy looking thing from the McDonald's commercials?
Sure.
There's been debate about what he is.
Like what gender he is? Is that where we're going?
Like what he is.
Oh.
And originally...
Why does he have to be defined? Why
well, they
can't
introduced Grimace. He had 4 arms because he was the guy stealing everybody's milkshake.
Right.
And then they put 2 arms on him because they figured it'd be more anthropomorphically correct. And then they said he was Ronald McDonald's best friend. But they never described what this thing is. It's purple, but what is it? There was a McDonald's manager in Canada who was named like Manager of the Year or something like that. And the local TV station, I guess, does a feature on the McDonald's Manager of the Year.
Do, because
and
Canada.
The question came up, what the hell's Grimace? He said, Grimace is a taste bud.
Oh.
Even though McDonald's, in their own, when they originated the character, they said something like, he's the embodiment of a milkshake, which doesn't make any sense. But they said this manager says it's a taste bud.
Interesting. When did we start listening to Canadians?
Well, never when it comes to defining what American brands are and mean. So I don't know.
I just pulled up a YouTube video to teach yourself how to backflip.
Okay.
So
tell me how it goes.
It says learn how to backflip in 5 minutes. So we're going to do that in the break.
Marianne wrote, thank God Johnny Manziel isn't in the Hall of Fame. That variant would be hell.
I love a good Johnny Manziel reference.
It's been a few years, but we can blow the dust off of that one.
Gary and Shannon will continue.
Crisscrossed in the wrong direction. Found myself in a conversation from a missed connection.
Like if left to your devices.
What do you mean, you guys?
Like your species.
Not you are the same species. Yes. Yes.
10 hours a day?
I guess there are people.
Is that how guys are wired? Where like that's not crazy?
Oh, that would be crazy regardless of who did it.
Okay.
Like, are you trying to think of dudes that you know who would spend 10 hours a day just watching porn?
No, I'm just thinking, what would I watch 10 hours a day of? Like maybe a Real Housewives season, maybe binge that. 10 hours just seems a little excessive. But watching sex for 10 hours a day is crazy. Like that, I don't understand.
Well, you can't look to me for answers if that's what you're doing. I can't tell.
Everyone in this article is a man.
Well,
So that's why I didn't know if this was something that men are like, yeah, I could see that. I could see 10 hours a day. Because men are visual people. Women,
yeah, but 10
hours.
Listen, I think that there's something to be said about this article is out of The Guardian, and it refers to a series of dudes who have quit watching porn, and they amazingly go, hey, I really like sex with women and not myself. It's one of those things that I've never quite I understand it. How's that? I'll say this. I understand it, and I know why men watch it. I don't know women who watch it, period. I know that there's this weird unicorn feeling that dudes are going to find a woman who's going to want to watch porn with them. I don't know who those people are.
The market is dominated by MindGeek, a Canadian company. It owns sites including YouPorn and Pornhub. They get 130 million daily visitors at Pornhub.
They reported an immediate spike in traffic of more than 20% in March of last year when all of the lockdowns started. We saw that. I mean, we were doing stories about that. It looked like in certain places these things were absolutely spiking because nobody had anything to do, and they had, pardon the pun, all kinds of time on their hands.
They had a study out of Britain about when porn works its way into your life. And they found that 51% of children aged 11 to 13 had seen pornography, whether it be on their phones, at school. 11 to 13 is the time when they are exposed to that. And this does talk about something you've talked about before when it comes to porn and it being unhealthy when you are growing up and you don't know what sex is or how it works and how you start watching the crazy Cheesecake Factory menu porn and then your baseline for what is normal and natural and healthy is not in the right place.
Well, this guy, they refer to a guy named Thomas who's in his 30s. That's not his real name, but he says he was exposed to it as a kid. He said he was 13, that it was funny. Started watching it in his room alone. What started as occasional use, he says, became a daily habit. In his early 20s, he lived with one of his parents. He didn't say which, the parent didn't care what Thomas was doing online. And he says at the time it felt normal, but it got out of hand quite quickly. Thanks, Thomas, for the pun. He got a girlfriend at 16, actually started having sex with a person, and said he was watching less pornography, but the addiction was just waiting to resurface. So you get into the lockdown, he loses his job, he is living with older relatives and trying to protect them from COVID, so he's not going out, spends more and more hours online.
Imagine that, living with grandpa and grandma and spending all your time watching porn in the next room.
I think about 80% of my mental downfall was because of porn, he said, because he started seeking out more explicit content. He became withdrawn. He became miserable. His self-esteem plummeted. Shame consumed him. Did I ever feel suicidal? Yeah, I did get to that point, he says. When I went to go see my general practitioner, I thought, I can't sit in my room and do nothing. I need help.
He's not alone. He Googled something like how to stop watching porn. He said there was just so much. People probably makes you depressed when you realize you just spent 10 hours of your day watching girls be violated. In some cases.
It's the thing where I understand why the allure is there. I understand which part of your lizard brain that it tickles, but the impact that it can have
emotionally on you,
just in those normal relationships that you have with people,
right,
is so the potential for it to be so damaging. And listen, the first paragraph in this article, I read the line, what started as occasional use. What do we use? We use drugs. We use alcohol. We use these things that we are addicted to too often, right? And yes, there are people who can control recreational use of all of these things, as there are people who can control, I suppose, recreational use of pornography. But there's so many people who fall for it so quickly, and it doesn't have the same telltale signs that a drug or alcohol addiction might. right? This is a much more emotional, rooted in your head kind of weird
And
thing.
then there's the whole way it plays out in your real life. Like
Right.
Trevor Bauer. Where did he learn that stuff?
That's a perfect example of it. I mean, he's one guy.
You don't just wake up one day and say, "Oh, what if I punched her there?" That would be enjoyable. Somebody put that in his head that's how sex goes, or it escalated to that because the in and out menu gets boring, and that, like this guy Thomas said, he started to seek out crazier stuff.
Or the suggestion that that's the masculine way to do that.
Yeah.
Is to start wailing on somebody. I don't.
Well, that's the antithesis of the masculine way to do it.
The generation of American men are also giving up on college. There was a study that showed that at the close of the last academic year, 2021, women made up 59.5% of college students. That is an all-time high.
I think that's for a number of reasons. I mean, part of me loves school, loves higher learning, but a college is such a racket in so many cases. And, who's more likely to get a job in a trade industry, right? Like electrician or a plumber or something like that.
That's true.
It's going to be a man. I know that sounds so crazy. I'm not saying girls can't be electricians. I'm just saying look around. How many electricians have you called and how many have turned up to be female? But there are more job opportunities that are good money-making opportunities for traditionally men-type roles than it is for women.
Yeah, and if you get more close, more local, at UCLA, race and gender obviously can't be considered in admission decisions. The proportion of male undergraduates at UCLA fell to 41% in the fall of 2020, down from 45% 7 years before that. And over the same period, undergraduate enrollment expanded by 3,000 students. But that expansion of those spots, 9 out of 10 of them went to women. We're a dying breed, fellas. Stop playing with yourselves. Let's get a college education. Let's get back out there. Strap on some fake Balenciaga sweats and get back to work.
Carrie and Shannon will continue.
Anybody need a life coach?
I'm begging you. Wait, can you turn around? Can you turn around? Just wait. Can we work this out? Can we work this out? Just wait. Can you come here, please? 'Cause I wanna be with you.
Gary and Shannon, KFI AM 640 live everywhere on the iHeartRadio app.
Ooh, this crazy True Crime Tuesday story has tentacles.
Love it. And it's current, too. It's, we don't have to blow the dust off the old folder, the old cold case file.
I like blowing the dust off of those once in a while. I know sometimes we get heat. People go, "Oh, you're doing a true crime story from 1934." But some of them are very fascinating.
Yeah, and it's not like they knew the story in the first place.
Right.
Well, I've heard this one a million times. Hey, good news out of Northern California. The Calder fire burning towards Lake Tahoe has slowed significantly over these last 5 or so days. It still burned 216,000 acres, but is now 49% contained. They have been doing some fantastic work cutting fire lines around that and doing everything basically to protect South Lake Tahoe. Still some places that are under threat, but the evacuation orders were now downgraded to evacuation warnings as people start to stream back into town.
Well, it is 12:30. Time to check in on Washington.
The swamp is horrible.
So government doesn't work.
Come on, man.
We're gonna make this like a reality TV show.
Corn Pop was a bad dude.
Always a pleasure to be anywhere but Washington, D.C.
Hey, Joe.
Hey, Esther.
A town all too clearly built on a swamp, and in so many ways still a swamp.
That's a bunch of malarkey.
Somebody said drain the swamp. I said, oh, that's so hokey.
Keep yapping, man.
Swamp Watch.
You know the thing.
Yesterday was a big day when it came to unemployment benefits that expired. Millions of Americans lost their unemployment benefits yesterday, leaving only a handful of the support programs for those who have been hit financially by all of this. In California, of course, you're going to see unemployment insurance and EDD checks going out for, 27 years or something like that. But federally, some of these programs ended.
Ike Ajachi joins us now from D.C. with all of the latest. How is this going to look going forward, Ike?
Well, it's going to look like a lot of people have really lost the support that they've been relying on through the pandemic. There are two critical programs that ended on Monday. One provided jobless aid to the self-employed, and as well as like the gig workers. Those were, musicians and things of that sort. And another one provided benefits to those who've been unemployed for more than 6 months. And there's another thing that ended as well, too. The Biden administration $300 weekly supplemental unemployment benefit, that also ran out. So to offset the loss of support, the White House has encouraged states to try to keep paying those $300 weekly benefits by using money from the stimulus bill. But here's the thing. No states have opted to do that right now. As a matter of fact, many states opted out of this federal program earlier, way earlier. And that's after some businesses complained that they couldn't find enough people to hire. However, that's a claim several economists say that just isn't really correlated. Now, I do want to say this. There's been $650 billion worth of jobless claims that's been injected into the economy by the federal government. That's according to the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget. Now, they say that money it kept millions of Americans who lost their jobs through no fault of their own in their apartments, paying for food and gasoline, and keeping up with their bills. Now, the signaling of the end of the pandemic, it's coming as the Labor Department says there are still 5.7 million fewer jobs than before the pandemic. But the last thing I'll tell you is that to put it into perspective, these benefits, they are ending a lot sooner than the previous crisis. Remember the Great Recession back in 2008? During that downturn, jobless benefits in various forms, they were extended from the start of recession in 2008 all the way up to 2013. That's when they ended. And when they did end, only about 1.3 million people were still receiving aid.
Yeah, I'm curious if this is causing rifts. We know that Joe Biden has been one of those rare Democrat voices who have said you can't continue to give unemployment forever. But members the farther left, the progressive end of the Democratic Party have said this is exactly the job of government. Has this sort of bubbled up and been that topic of discussion or dissent within the Democratic Party?
Yeah, it really has. And you're seeing that a lot earlier last week with West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin saying that he's worried about the trillions of dollars being spent and then what that means for future generations in terms of inflation. But at the same time, you're also seeing some economists, like I said before, saying that these jobless programs, they really didn't have the flexibility or the direct impact as the unemployment benefits being paid to really affect it. A lot of the economists from J.P. Morgan, as a matter of fact, Peter McCrory and Daniel Silver, they said that there was no correlation between job growth and the state's decisions to drop the federal unemployment aid, at least so far. And only a few economists so far have said that they've only found minimal benefits. So you're really not seeing the correlation or the evidence to really suggest that otherwise. Nevertheless, you're still seeing a lot of economists saying that these job benefits did do more positive than negative.
Ike, thank you. Thanks for all the details. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Take care.
You bet. Ike Ajachi with ABC News there in Washington, D.C.
Well, it looks like Donald Trump is signaling a heightened interest in reclaiming the White House, and he's putting in the groundwork to do it. We're talking boots on the ground in Iowa, fundraising, national media interviews, new press statements, attack ads online. Matt Gaetz, his buddy, says that Trump sees Biden on the ropes, wants to throw punches as a combatant, not a heckler from the stands. As the base remains rightly loyal to Trump. And as Gaetz says, a good rule in politics is to be a candidate for as short a time as necessary.
I don't know what that means.
Like the longer you're running, the more time they have to find something wrong with you. Not that we haven't had enough time with Trump.
I'm curious to see how social media would be able to handle a Trump campaign, a second Trump campaign, because he himself is not allowed on those platforms for the most part. And if he's going to get a message out there, it's going to be that he puts out a statement, somebody finds it, and then posts it to Twitter /Facebook /Instagram, whatever. If that workaround would be something that he would even be capable of. Would social media play a role in a Trump campaign?
It would have to. I don't think you can run without it in some form. They could get creative, certainly, whether it's the family or I don't know, spokespeople or what have you, or an official Trump campaign account as opposed to his personal account. I'm not sure how they would do that. They say he's shied away from divulging specifics about his plans, but privately he suggests to others he is running in 2024. Paying attention to the finer details behind the scenes, they say, like making editing suggestions to his web ads to make them harder hitting against Biden.
All right, allow me a moment of cynicism here. This guy realizes that he is still on people's political radar. If he can turn that into money, don't you think that's what he would also do? I mean, I'm less convinced about him running an actual campaign in an attempt to become president than I am an attempt to run a campaign in order to dump money into political action committees and other things that he might be able to dip his hands into.
Yes, I agree.
That's what I think is the most likely right now. It could change, but that seems to be the most likely.
All right. Well, President Biden has a big week. He is touring the Ida disaster zones. He's got 9/11 coming up, and then he's going to come here and campaign for Gavin Newsom.
Gary and Shannon will continue Swamp Watch in just a moment.
I keep seeing visions of you, visions of you. I keep getting stuck in this deja vu. Even in the darkest hour, even when I know it can't be true, I keep seeing visions of you, visions of you.
Gary and Shannon, KFI AM 640 live everywhere on the iHeartRadio app. We're in the middle of Swamp Watch talking about what's going on in D.C. The president woke up in D.C., but then he moved over to New York. He went up there today to travel through a couple of different neighborhoods in New York and New Jersey, surveying damage in parts of the Northeast after the flash flooding from the remnants of Hurricane Ida when it rolled through last week. He's calling for federal spending to fortify infrastructure so that it can better withstand such powerful storms. His plan calls for that $1 trillion in infrastructure spending nationwide that's currently pending in Congress. He's visiting Manville, where fires broke out in swamped homes and businesses Friday, many of them inaccessible to firefighters because of the floodwaters. The irony of that. A house or business burning down in the midst of a flood.
Biden is expected to commemorate the 20th anniversary of the September 11th terrorist attacks later this week. And then he's going to spend the remainder of the weekend at his home in Wilmington, Delaware.
It seems like a lot of vacation in the last couple of weeks, doesn't it?
He needs rest. I was reading this morning that New York City's medical examiner's office is still working on identifying remains from 9/11. There are over 1,000 victims whose remains have not been found. Just recently, the New York Times reports through new advanced DNA technology that Dorothy Morgan, who was in the North Tower of the World Trade Center, was identified by a tiny bone fragment.
Fragment. In that giant pile of rubble, they were able to find a fragment of bone.
The city's chief medical examiner said her agency is still committed to do whatever it takes and as long as it takes to identify those victims.
A quick note about the president. Also, on Thursday, we understand the White House has said that he's going to lay out a 6-prong approach to defeating COVID, accelerating vaccinations, and trying to get through the Delta variant surge that we've seen in these last couple of weeks. The story that we started getting word about yesterday came out of the State Department regarding the rescue of 4 Americans out of Afghanistan, an American mom and her 3 kids, Miriam and her 3 kids. And the State Department yesterday was telling the Associated Press that the State Department, quote, facilitated the safe departure of 4 U.S. citizens by overland route from Afghanistan. Embassy staff was present upon their arrival. And for several hours, that's all we knew. Mark Wayne Mullins is a congressman from Oklahoma and apparently had something to do with this in terms of being contacted by people, contractors in Afghanistan, American contractors still in Afghanistan, who were willing to help find Miriam and get her out. Well, one of the guys, Corey Mills, actually talked about what it was like to get Miriam and her kids, I think between the ages of 2 and 15, if I'm not mistaken, out of Afghanistan. One of the things the State Department said was that the State Department facilitated it. It was a deal with the Taliban, and they were able to get out scot-free. Here's what Corey Mills had to say.
Back I'll just go ahead and say that there's quite a bit of inaccuracies there. First off, the Taliban did interfere. I have multiple conversations recorded where the Taliban says on certain occasions, especially the commander who is there, who's a Malawi, which is like their kind of leader, Commander Mullah, is that sitting at this specific checkpoint. And in that, he says, we have no agreement, we have no coordination with the Americans to allow you to pass. And, there's a whole string of things that he was basically noting as far as you guys requested these borders to be locked down, why should we reopen them? We had to go through a lot of kind of shell game trickery, utilizing multiple phones, getting different Malawis to contact one another. And that was how we eventually tricked them into allowing us clearance to get this family across. Because right now, and here's the greatest part, Brian, we literally were on the nth hour. Okay, we were told by the State Department officials here, hey, I'm sorry, the border's totally locked now. The Taliban issued an order from Doha that no one goes through, American or not, because they're waiting to establish their government, and there's nothing more we could do. It was our team who was able to basically trick this Taliban commander into letting them through because they thought that one of my sat phones, which has a +88 number, was Doha, and we convinced them that Doha, where the leadership was, had approved this, and we had another Malawi basically say the same thing, and that enabled us to pass them through at the nth hour.
And he didn't explain which country they made it into because he said they may have to use that tactic again to get somebody out. But a State Department spokesman, when asked whether the agency is overselling its role, said the department assisted 4 Americans. We provided guidance to them. We worked to facilitate their safe passage, and embassy officials greeted them once they had crossed the border. But Corey Mills, like I said, a private military team, he claims that while they were there, it took hours for anybody from the embassy to actually get to the family, even though they said right when they crossed the border, the embassy was there to greet them, which was not the case, apparently. So
we talked a little bit about President Trump and will he or won't he run when it comes to 2024. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis has been another name that has popped up as a potential Republican to run for 2024. He said that that's nonsense. Nonsense. He said, all the speculation about me is purely manufactured. This was during a press conference that he held to talk up a COVID-19 treatment unit in St. Cloud, Florida. He said, I just do my job and we work hard. I hear all this stuff, and honestly, it's nonsense. He's, of course, built his brand by linking himself to Trump, who gave him that key endorsement when he was running against the ag commissioner there in the GOP primary in 2018.
I'd be curious to see how those two would actually get along.
Yeah.
I mean, on a campaign trail, not that they would campaign together, but I mean, if they were opposing each other. And Ron DeSantis may be right. It may simply be a tactic to try to pit somebody against Donald Trump and sort of wear down both of them.
I see.
To elevate whatever, if it's another Republican candidate or the Democrat side, whatever it is, but that would be, you encourage these two guys to fight over and over again, tear each other apart. That's less work for you to do.
Yeah, that's what the Democrats are really good at, eating each other alive. The last few months, DeSantis has traveled to California, Utah, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Indiana, and Texas. He has avoided stepping foot in the, look at me, I'm seriously running states of Iowa and New Hampshire.
I was just going to say, those are the only two that are not on that list.
Yeah, exactly.
Sounds like. You mentioned the president coming here to California sometime next week to campaign. That's next week.
Yeah.
You gotta get your votes in by Tuesday, and they're talking about doing it next week. Now, granted, he's got some other stuff to do, and like you said, he's going to be in Delaware, a little R&R, because presidenting can be very hard on a body, especially when it's 80 years old. The LA Times actually has a whole story about how Latinos voters in California are sitting out the recall in vast, vast numbers. And it's a specific look at a larger problem that exists in this recall for Gavin Newsom, which is Democrats don't give two rips about Gavin Newsom. They care about not having a Republican as governor.
Right.
But Gavin Newsom's not a likable guy. He's not the guy that people want to cheer for or, rally behind or anything like that. It's an odd time, I suppose, in California. And the numbers have been good for Gavin Newsom in the last couple of days. The last couple of polls that have come out have shown a wider gap to keep him in office. But unless he gets those groups of people, specific, strong Democrat groups to come out and vote, it's going to be a rough night on September 14th. He's going to have some sweating to do.
Well, coming up next, it is Tuesday, which means it is True Crime Tuesday. It kicks off at 1 o'clock. A very prominent family in South Carolina is all anyone in South Carolina can talk about, because the wife and son were murdered, and now the father has been shot, and there may be some financial malfeasance that went on. We'll tell you all of the gory details when we come back.
To Gary and Shannon.
You spend the first hour of your vacation at the luggage carousel thinking there's nowhere to go but up. But there is a place to go but up, because when you open your suitcase, you find it filled with dolls. Dolls like the ones in that movie that scared you so much you wet your girlfriend's bed. Ah, Marissa, the one that got away. You return the bag to the airport with relief. It lasts until you get back to your room, where a fallen doll waits to greet you.
Don't let a suitcase full of dolls ruin your vacation. Go on a real vacation. Go RVing.
Grand Canyon University, a Christian university, is one of the largest and fastest growing universities in the country, offering over 200 engaging programs online. GCU invests in high-demand areas such as nursing, teaching, and the sciences. Students engage with faculty who become partners in your success. GCU's online students received over $100 million in scholarships in 2020. Visit gcu.edu/myoffer to see the scholarships you qualify for.
Okay, guys, we got to put our trays up for takeoff.
Where's Dad?
Oh, he's in the back. We could only get 3 seats together.
Daddy has my pillow.
Okay, well, we'll get it later. Can you not put your feet up, please?
Why aren't we going?
I'm not sure, honey. We must be in line for takeoff.
Like security?
Well, that was a different line.
I have to go.
We just sat down.
But I have to go.
The seatbelt sign's on.
Why aren't we moving?
Hey, no kicking.
We're just 15th in line for takeoff.
Son of a...
Don't go there. Go on a real vacation. Go RVing.